Well, no one can accuse the Reverend Eugene Rivers of being shy and retiring. He's been an outspoken critic and contrarian about issues in Boston's minority neighborhoods for decades. Now, though, a front-page Boston Globe column by Adrian Walker says Rivers and the Reverend Bruce Wall are behind a group trying to get the Keolis Transportation Company to pay them for advisory services, even though the company has no contract with them. It all makes for a classic he said, she said, except for the very real presence of that $105,000 invoice.
According to the Reverend Eugene Rivers, Keolis desperately wanted an endorsement from him and the Reverend Bruce Wall in its bid for the MBTA commuter rail contract. Once they got their diversity endorsement, Rivers says the company ignored them. Keolis spokeswoman Leslie Ahn says Rivers then met her at a Washington, D.C. hotel on March 14th. She says Rivers told her, "Your company is not moving fast enough. I can be your worst nightmare, and I am secret ops." Rivers denies saying any of those things. Meanwhile, Ahn says Rivers stood up, handed her a sealed envelope, and left. It contained this detailed invoice for $105,000 for services purportedly rendered by the DRM Advisory Group. For his part, Rivers says the invoice was simply a message, a flare, as he puts it. But Leslie Ahn says her first reaction was, wow, is this even legal?
Reverend Rivers was not available to appear on the show, but I am joined by Michael McCormick. He's a lobbyist representing Keolis. He's also a former Boston City Councilor. Thanks for being with us.
Sure, you're welcome.
So just tell us a little bit about the background of this. How did you come to be discussing this with Reverend Bruce Wall and Reverend Eugene Rivers? We were told that Adrian Walker, actually, the columnist, actually put the two of you together, the three of you.
I'm not sure where you get that information, but it's not accurate. In December of 2013, Bruce Wall, Reverend Wall, sent a letter to the general manager of the T and CC'd the Globe, essentially criticizing Keolis and its partner, SNCF, who operate the French National Railroad, for discriminatory practices and so forth. And it was distorted, inaccurate. And I called Bruce, who I've known for 30 years, and said, I don't know where you're getting your information, but it's wrong. I went out and met with him in late December. Not only did I meet with him, I brought data and information to show exactly how positive Keolis and SNCF is. For example, in Virginia, 60% of the workforce is minority, 20% women. And I think he certainly was impressed enough at the board meeting. He stood up and supported Keolis.
He'd been very critical. And we've seen, and he wrote letters, and there was articles in the Globe, and then suddenly had this flip around. And I looked at the contract today. There's a direct quote from him saying they give a resounding endorsement, wholehearted to Keolis. But they claim, or Eugene Rivers says, that you made promises to them in exchange for that endorsement.
That is absolutely untrue. It is not true. I don't, Emily, I don't think I've had two conversations with Eugene Rivers in the last 20 years, and I've never had any discussions with him prior to the award of this contract. What Keolis does is, in SNCF, is we work with the minority community to encourage minority participation in the jobs. And that's what the conversations I've had with Bruce Wall and the members of his group, DRM, is if you have qualified minority participants, we will help them to become employees of the commuter rail system. But they have to be qualified, and they have to be certified either as disadvantaged business enterprise, women business enterprise, or minority business enterprise folks. And that's what Bruce Wall and the members of his group and I have been working on, along with other members of the Keolis team. So this notion, I've never had a conversation with Gene Rivers about Keolis at all.
How did it come to this? How could Gene Rivers and this invoice that was signed by the Reverend Bruce Wall, how could it come to be the idea that Keolis, your representative, could owe them $105,000? Did you take it as a shakedown? Did you take it as a flare, as Eugene Rivers says?
Look, I was very disappointed when I first heard about it. It was delivered to the Director of Communications for Keolis in Washington, and she told me about it. I said, disregard it. Send me a copy of the invoice. I called Bruce Wall and said, "What is this all about?" And he didn't seem to know much about it. And I
He
said,
signed it.
I said, "Bruce, you signed it." And he said, "Well, I know, but," and I said, "Bruce, we've never had a discussion about paying for services." And I sent him a detailed letter that we've never had a discussion. The promises have never been made, and in a response to me, he acknowledged that. So I'm mystified, frankly, as to why this invoice was sent.
Going back to Eugene Rivers, and he couldn't come tonight, but he said that there were commitments made, promises made. They signed these letters. They agreed to endorse, this transportation company for the contract. Once again, if you would
pay him $105,000.
No, but do
Okay.
certain things for the minority community.
And we agreed. And the agreement is to encourage minority participation. We have met with over 90 certified business groups. We've had work fairs. We continue to work with the minority workforce. That is the promise that was made, and we'll continue to do it.
And he claims that you didn't follow up on the promise, that there was, you said you'd get back to him within 2 or 3 weeks. You never got back to him, and that's what led to the meeting in Washington and then the subsequent
I've been in.
invoice.
I've never had any conversations with Reverend Rivers. My conversations have all been with Reverend Wall, and there have been a couple of times, right, where I haven't been in touch with him weekly because the diversity officer had not been hired, and the woman has been hired. I sent Bruce an email last week saying she's been hired. I'll be out with the acting general manager, Gerald Francis, next week, and never heard a response, and that's when Adrian got his information.
Do you consider this a threat? I mean, is it a shakedown? Is it, hey, look, we're going to throw our muscle around here. Either you do this or we're going to keep sending you these kinds of things, flares, whatever you call it?
I have no idea what he means by a flare. We're going to continue to work with the minority community. The calls that I received today are mostly calls saying we want to work with Keolis. They know we have an 8-year contract, and we want to work with the minority community. We have an obligation to do it, and we want to do it. That's who we are. And I was disappointed. I don't know what else I can say other than disappointed and very shocked by the fact that an invoice was delivered to someone. It wasn't delivered to me. It was delivered to a woman, and she was equally disturbed.
Well, will you continue to work with Reverend Eugene Rivers and Reverend Bruce Wall, given the fact that they have sent you this invoice? I mean, will you work with them, or will you work with different
we will work with
community groups?
We'll work with any community group that's legitimate and wants to put folks and their constituents to work. We will continue to do it.
Is this one DRM legitimate in your mind?
I've known
Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan. I've never heard of it. Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan Advisory Group.
They were created specifically to deal with the commuter rail contract. And we will, all I can tell you, Emily, we will continue to work with the minority community to put people to work.
All right, Michael McCormick, thanks for coming.
Thank you.